Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Startup Operators Weekly Roundup, where I, Gunjan, Saha, and Roshan will discuss the week's hottest takes from the Indian startup ecosystem. Now, in the last edition, we started off by saying what a great start June has been. But this week, we saw the investments in the ecosystem slow down a bit. But that doesn't mean it wasn't an exciting week. A lot of merger and acquisitions took place in the startup community. The big name was Tata, that is, in talks with Dunzo, has acquired 1MG, and also gonna invest in Cult Fit, and enter the whole ecosystem like Amazon and Reliance earlier this year. Along with that, we also have BharatPe that acquired a loyalty platform, Pay India. Apart from that, WhatFix has raised a $90 million funding, and we again see a lot of activity in the EV space. So stay tuned as we discuss this and try to make sense of what's happening. Hi, Roshan. Nice sunny and a cloudy afternoon at once together in Bangalore, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the kind of the perfect weather to talk about startups, right? So thanks everyone for joining. It's been a wonderful week. We're going to talk about a bunch of interesting things. I also, I happened to look at this story by Print, which was pretty interesting. There was this story about West Champaran and Bihar and how migrant workers who returned from the big cities found local entrepreneurship opportunities after a proper skill mapping exercise that was conducted by the government and some of the authorities as well, and they've transformed it into some kind of a startup hub of sorts. So all kinds of clothes and things to that effect are being manufactured there, right? I mean, talk about making the best of a terrible situation. So a lot of people in the video also said that if they were if I mean, they were, first of all, they were so happy that they could work from their hometowns, right? And it's simple things like, I'm able to like go and visit my relatives. I'm able to go back home to my wife and children and things to that effect, which we take for granted, right? And that is really what I'm super excited about and happy about. A lot of them were unanimous that they won't go back to any of the cities and so on. They won't migrate to those places if they could have these employment opportunities and entrepreneurship opportunities in their hometowns itself, right? But it's not been easy before. I mean, finding market access or even staying competitive is not easy. And there were terrible things like, in when they migrate to all of these towns and cities, their phones are taken away, they don't get letters in time, and they're really cut off, right? Because the owners in these places feel that it's a distraction, and that people might these guys might go back and their business might suffer. So the working conditions are pretty horrible. So this is a fantastic exercise, and hats off to the Bihar government and authorities for being able to do this. So that was a really positive story, and do check out the Print story on how West Champaran is transforming, and I hope that it happens in many different places across India.
Well, yeah, that's a great note to start this week's roundup on. So
Yeah.
thanks a lot for that insight, Roshan. But yeah, as I mentioned, Tata has been on an acquisition spree, very similar to what Reliance was doing earlier this year. And among the major investments which Tata made last week, the first one was in e-pharmacy company called 1MG. Now, with this, the current deal is a primary and secondary share sale worth 250 to 270 million dollars. With Tata coming into the 1MG board, the valuation for the company is expected to cross well over $450 million. And the early investors, that was Sequoia India and Omidyar Network, might also exit the firm within the next 2 months. But again, these are developments that are yet to happen. Now, what does it mean when Tata Digital is going to get a majority stake in the company? With this with this investment, Tata will own close to 60% of ownership, and in the coming months, this share will only be increasing. Now, e-pharmacy, e-diagnostics, and teleconsultations are critical segments for Tata, and it's their play on making a digital ecosystem for the company. Apart from 1mg, Tata is also in talks to acquire a stake in 6-year-old Dunzo. And with this acquisition, Dunzo's valuation will increase to 150 to 200 million dollars. Dunzo, which is backed by Google, Lightbox, Bloom Ventures, among others, had last raised $40 million as part of a Series E funding, and I think this was earlier this year itself. But going forward, Dunzo also plans to raise as much as $150 million to extend its reach and probably turn unicorn in the next 1 or 2 years. And it's very interesting to note that today itself, Dunzo has an annualized GMV of over $100 million. So what started off from a WhatsApp group to $100 million business, I mean, it's really commendable. The other biggest news from Tata is its investment in Curefit. This deal comes close on the heels of Tata Digital's increase acquisition of Big Basket, and of course, as we discussed, 1mg. Now, Tata Digital will invest close to $75 million in Curefit. Mukesh Bansal, who is the co-founder and CEO of Curefit, will be joining the Tata Digital board as president and also continue leading the company as well. Till date, Curefit had raised about $418 million, and its last valuation was $815 million, I think. So, Roshan, what Reliance did over the span of few weeks earlier this year, as we discussed in the roundup, Tata seemed to have gone it, go big all in 1 week. So, what do you make of this grand Tata digital plan?
This has been in the works since 2017, actually, since Mr. N. Chandrasekaran, who's the current chairman, took over, chairman of Tata Sons took over, right? And I think couple of things broadly that we have to look at. One is the whole digital first thing, right? Which all demand will move online eventually, right? I mean, it's something that the pandemic has accelerated. And the second thing is how ecosystem products and services are coming together. It's not enough to sell one particular product or whatever. How you cross sell a bunch of things, how you're relevant throughout the consumer's life cycle, making their life simpler, easier, and so on, and how you become desirable to them matters a great deal, right? And this is kind of what Mr. N. Chandrasekaran also mentioned in his address earlier as well. So he has this mantra of simplification, synergy, and scale, right? So basically, figure out what your core is, get out of everything else, and then scale that core, right? And if you look at the couple of businesses, I mean, Tata Steel, for example, they exited all of their European businesses, and they've increased their India business to two-thirds of the size. Um,
Oh,
and they've done that through acquisitions as well. They've acquired Usha Martin, for example, last year, and the stock has done tremendously well. It's gone up, I think, four times in the last year itself. And then look at Tata Consumer, for example, right? They unbundled the food business from Tata Chemicals and merged it with Tata Consumer, and that stock has done really well. And that business is like zooming ahead. So I mean, if there's one brand in India that can do something like this, it is the Tata, right? So, which is, salt to software conglomerate, one of the most trusted, if not the most trusted brand in India, and has a heritage and legacy of 150 years. You know, um, think about it. They have a superbly large consumer base. They have 200 million households. Let me repeat that again: 200 million households, right? And provide all sorts of products and services. So this is an effort to integrate all of that digitally, right? And figure what else they can do and how else they can be relevant. And also, I think they're very cognizant of the fact that the generations are changing, and maybe for the younger demographics, there may be a different Tata that might come about, right? I mean, you could have a 150-year legacy, but then disruptions are just like that. I mean, if you were to poll, I think maybe the sub 18 or sub 25 kind of a demographic, who knows what kind of brands might emerge, right? I mean, maybe a Flipkart or an Amazon or a Google or something else might emerge as a trusted brand. And I think this is basically an effort to bring everything digital and to bring everything together, right? So you might see other things like financial products and so on and so forth being offered under this same brand itself. So Mr. Chandrasekaran had mentioned, in his post-pandemic sort of address that there are two or three trends that will become super relevant. One is the digital everywhere sort of a trend, right? Which is that data and AI will become central to every kind of every kind of business, right? Whether you're an online business or an offline business, whether you're in one industry or another, right? And also the fact that everything will become an ecosystem business, right? So it won't be one single product or service. I mean, it will be the coming together of many different products and services, and especially in some kind of a business which is a conglomerate business like Tata, right? um, and this whole digitally connected enterprise is, as I mentioned, it's been in the works for a while. They've tried to do this themselves. I mean, they've tried to build an e-commerce site, Tata Click. They've tried to do educational services with Tata Class Edge. They even had a ready-to-eat business app called Tata Q. But that hasn't really taken off. That also shows you how difficult it is to build a digital business, right? It's not just about money and resources. I mean, it requires a certain sort of DNA and certain sort of executional chops to be able to build and scale these businesses. So they've set aside about 12,000 crore rupees for these acquisitions itself, right? And you saw that they invested about 219 million in Big Basket for a 64% stake to take on Amazon, Reliance, and Walmart in retail. And now they're looking at Dunzo as well, right? I mean, we'll get to the Dunzo story in a bit, but then it's pretty fantastic. And they've been following the Reliance playbook of the last couple of years, right? I mean, if you look at the Geo juggernaut, for example, they've acquired every kind of business possible, right? Whether it's on the content side with Balaji Telefilms, or Edcast, and Imbibe on the education side, Savan on the music side, and so on and so forth. In fact, Reliance acquired NetMeds not too long ago, right? And also Amazon has started Amazon Pharmacy as well, and is doing drug deliveries in some parts. So I think that also is sort of like adding up to this whole 1mg acquisition by Tata, right? And Reliance has been richly rewarded by the stock market as well, right? So I mean, of course, given the market is at an all-time high, everything seems to be
Yesterday
floating
was
well
an
above.
all-time high. I mean,
Right,
yesterday the
exactly.
Sensex market touched an all-time
Yeah,
high.
but even otherwise, I think these trends have very strong fundamentals to back them up, right? And what a story with what a story it's going to be for Dunzo as well. Starting from a basic WhatsApp service to productizing it and then scaling it. That's amazing. So yeah, I mean, I think in the online pharmacy space, probably PharmEasy is the only standalone operator in that sense, right? So 1mg is with Tata, NetMeds is with Reliance, and then you have Amazon Pharmacy, right? So PharmEasy will have stiff competition, but they've raised a lot of cash, and hopefully they should be able to execute well. Yeah, very exciting news, and really amazing that old world businesses are moving to digital first sort of an open architecture where things are coming together digitally. So this will be fantastic for consumers as well, right? Because again, all of these businesses, the single aim is to become more relevant to the consumer, to offer cheaper, better, faster things for us. And yeah, phenomenal effort. Yeah.
Okay. So, one quick question I'd like to ask our listeners today is that, as we move into a more digital style of living, if you need something, you order from Amazon or Flipkart, right? If you need medicines, you order from 1mg or NetMeds. What do you think will happen to the offline retail stores? I mean, how do you see them adapting to these trends or me perishing? So let us know in our Twitter or LinkedIn comments, and yeah, probably we can have a discussion on that. But
Just
Roshan,
a
you,
quick comment on that. I think it'll all get integrated, man. So, there will not be strictly offline operations in some sense, right? Everything will get integrated, absorbed into either one of the larger platforms, or maybe some kind of a connected network of online, offline collaborations, partnerships, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I think that's really what's going to happen.
right. So, Roshan, one really important point that you brought up is that how difficult it is to, build a business within a company. If it's not your core focus, the amount of effort and time that goes into building at par with the best in the market, I mean, that's a serious task, right?
Yeah.
So, with that, context, BharatPe, which pioneered in QR UPI payments, recently acquired loyalty platform Payback India, right? And this acquisition was from they acquired Payback India from Express and ICICI Investment Strategic Fund, and this deal was for an undisclosed amount. Now, this is also the first ever acquisition of BharatPe, and it will make Payback India the country's largest multi-brand loyalty program with 100 million plus members. But with this acquisition, all Payback India employees will become part of the BharatPe group. And interesting to note here is that Payback will continue operating under its current name, and there'll be no impact on the existing customer and partner relationships with Payback. They'll continue to roll out initiatives to offer value for all the customers across India. And but UPI payment integrating with a loyalty platform. I mean, how cool is that? How do you think this will help BharatPay?
This is amazing. We've said it before that payments is a hook to offer products and services, right? I think this acquisition will just mean that BharatPay will have a catchment of customers for their merchants to leverage and engage, basically, right? They already have something like 60 lakh merchants on their platform, and they're providing a variety of products and services to these merchants, including credit services and invoice and bill collections, so on and so forth. And now they'll be able to offer loyalty services to these customers as well, right? And it's a very neat hook to attract more merchants as well. Payback is a, I think, 10, 11-year-old business, and they have a fair amount of experience in all these running all these loyalty programs and so on and so forth. I certainly have not used any of it, but then uh, it's a very symbiotic sort of an acquisition, right? And BharatPay itself, I think it was valued at 900 million in their last fundraise. They've had some pretty stellar brand ambassadors. I think they used to work with Salman Khan earlier, and now I think about 11 cricketers of the current Indian cricket team are brand ambassadors. They also have a tie-up with ICC and so on. It's amazing. I was looking at their business, and I think the goal ahead for them is to build out a loan book, right? And credit access, I've said this before, that is one of the most difficult things in India, especially for businesses, working loans, working capital, and so on and so forth. So this will just mean that there'll be more capital for businesses to leverage, and they can also leverage the customers that Payback India will bring along with this acquisition. So interesting times ahead for sure.
BharatPe, I think we covered this in our May roundup. BharatPe became a unicorn. I think it's currently valued at 1.8 to 2.2 billion
Oh,
dollars,
okay.
and it's I
Shucks,
think
man.
currently
There's a unicorn every week. It's hard to keep up.
no, that's absolutely true. And yeah, I think BharatPe is the fifth most valued fintech in India today. I think after Paytm, PhonePe, Razorpay, and Pine Labs. So yeah, it's, I mean, exciting. Also, the number of startup acquisitions happening in this space has increased drastically over the years. But yeah, moving on to the next news. I mean, something which is very much in line with the COVID trends. WhatFix raised $90 million in its Series B funding, and this was led by SoftBank's Vision Fund 2. The round also saw participation from existing investors that are Eight Roads Ventures, Sequoia Capital India, Dragon Investment Group, F Prime Capital, and Cisco Investment. Now, with these fundraise, their valuation has increased three times from what it was valued at during a Series C fundraise. Today, it's WhatFix is valued at $600 million. Now, for those folks who don't know what WhatFix is a digital adoption platform that helps companies create and integrate interactive walkthroughs on any of the websites or web applications. It basically accelerates adoption journeys for end customers. Now, with a 3x increase in valuation, it's interesting to note that WhatFix's revenue has also tripled over the past 3 years. They have over 500 global customers, including the Netherlands, Red Cross, Experience, Century Financial, Bosch and Lomb, and I think their main goal with this funding is to increase its market presence in US and expand across Asia Pacific and Europe. And along with that, they'll also be investing a lot in product innovation, focusing primarily on AI and enterprise solutions. But I think it's interesting to note the timing for the investment as well, right? I mean, all companies are, digitizing their internal workflows and customer-facing engagements. And a company like WhatFix that helps in digital onboarding, I mean, it's really the need of the hour, right?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, you have to address the valuation, right? I mean, people keep saying that SaaS valuations are way out of whack and everything, and I can understand that feeling. I think even 3-4 years back, maybe getting 10x revenue was considered an achievement, and today you're seeing 15, 20, and even 30 types of multiple, not just for private companies, but even for public companies that have listed in the US and so on. So uh, I think it's just the cloud economy that's growing, right? And it's also the SaaSification of all software, basically, right? If you look at IT procurement, I think even now a very small percentage of it is SaaS applications, and that is two things are happening. One is that it's accelerating at a very very rapid pace, especially given the pandemic that's happened, right? And second is the ground to cover is so huge. So think of it as like acceleration plus room for growth, right? And which is why, I mean, you're kind of seeing these sort of multiples as well. 600 million valuation is pretty damn good, right? And a couple of interesting things about WhatFix's business. One is that they leverage some of the existing software like Salesforce, SAP, SuccessFactors, Oracle Cloud, SharePoint, Workday, and so on and so forth. They sit on top of these software. And second is they're extremely horizontal, right? Because these softwares are used in a variety of industries. And you know gone are the days when you would get a learning manual or a certification or whatever. I think today learning is extremely contextual, and that is what WhatFix is doing. Basically, it's hand holding the user experience within the app and increasing adoption, right? So that's a very interesting business in that sense. And with the cost of software increasing, with the digitization, and with the fact that it's going to be remote operations post pandemic, their business is going to just become increasingly relevant, and that is really uh, uh, what the valuation reflects, really. So again, great work, great team, and all the best for them.
Right. So, Roshan, one question, I mean, that just, struck my mind. All these large enterprise companies, I mean, of course, spend millions and millions of dollars on acquiring, on deploying platforms like Salesforce, SAP, Oracle, as you mentioned. Why do you think investing in digital adoption is also a great need after spending so much of dollars? Any thoughts on that?
Because I kind of liken it to the Ferrari in the garage equation, right? So it's like, imagine you paid for a Ferrari and then it's in the garage, it's not even being used, right? And that's really what's happening to plenty of the enterprise software out there, right? Which is that they're all top down purchases. Some manager, some business leader somewhere procures them because they want to see dashboards and reports and analytics and everything, right? And then people are forced to use it, right? And the adoption sucks. I mean, enterprise software adoption sucks unanimously, right? And anything that can increase or improve that is going to obviously be very valuable, right? So that is really what we're seeing.
All right. Okay, so I think after a spree of Ola electric news and everything, we have another mobility and EV news bite. Self Propulsion has recently raised $2 million, and this was led by India partners GrowX Ventures, Huddle Accelerator, and Mysleo, who took part in the funding round. It's part of its pre-series A round in September 2020. They, I think, had raised $1 million. Stealth Propulsion was founded by former ISRO engineers Nakul Thukar, Paras Kaushal, and Supratim Nashkar. Stealth Propulsion builds and deploys electric light commercial vehicles and electric heavy commercial vehicles as part of their integrated solution. They initiated deploying electric LCVs or light commercial vehicles with various logistics firms for the last and middle mile movement of cargo. All this while setting up its first charging station and service center right here in Bangalore. But Roshan, we had spoken with the founders of Ultraviolet. We discussed at length Ola Electric's future in India.
Yeah.
And what do you think? How do you think is India positioned to see more EVs on the road. Right? I mean, I know we have seen Tata having
Yeah.
massive developments R&D going on, but just to contrast this, when Tesla announced that they'll set up an R&D research in Bangalore, the number of memes that came online on India's preparedness for EV just blew up. So yeah, would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, see, India has a history of leapfrogging technologies, right? We leapfrog to mobile without, desktops and PCs really catching up, right? And so this is going to happen with EV as well. And I think the good thing is the government has kind of recognized that and is, pushing it through plenty of things, right? Whether it's infrastructure like charging stations, so on and so forth on highways and so on, right? Or even saying that, we'll use EV vehicles for some of the government work itself, right? And public transport and so on and so forth. So, it's very difficult to build in the space at this point of time because early in the curve, you'll have to be full stack, full life cycle for this, right? You have to build the vehicle, the batteries, the charging stations, pretty much everything, right? And that's really what you're seeing with cell propulsion as well. I mean, they have commercial vehicles and also the supporting infrastructure. Um, and that's just the nature of the cycle we're in, right? I mean, early in the cycle you have to do this. I mean, imagine if you're building some software right now and you have to build the security and infrastructure for it, right? It's madness. We just build at the application level, but that was not how it was, 15, 20 years back, right? And that's but this will improve. I mean, you're seeing people like Tata, Mahindra, Ola invest in this ecosystem, and I think you will have that application level innovation coming up very soon, right? And the cost of starting up will reduce, the friction to start up will reduce. So the other thing that you have to also keep in mind is that all of this will offer a lot of data, right? So they can do a ton of monitoring through this data. And if you look at something like Blackbuck, for example, how they've been able to really transform the logistics business, right? Through sensors and through all of this data monitoring and stuff like that. I think we're just, again, we're just at the tip of the we're just at the early at the curve. And things going forward may become like amazing, right? I mean, the scope for innovation is just fantastic. The sky is the limit in that sense. So yeah, all the best to the cell propulsion team, and really look forward to covering the journey as well.
Yep. All right, so a very interesting tweet from Bamboo Sir last week. He tweeted, "It is best not to burden our efforts with expectations. When we act with resolute will, the universe opens doors, but our prior expectations get in the way of us recognizing these open doors." So very simple and a hard-hitting truth on about that. If you're
Absolutely.
passionate about something, you just go ahead and do it without expecting anything in return. And
Become a
that's
karma yogi,
exactly
basically.
right. So a good food for thought for whatever lies ahead this week. But before we wrap this, Roshan, amazing interviews coming up. But I'm really curious to know what you'll be talking with these. What conversation did you have with these people?
Yeah, so episode 100 of the Startup Operator is coming up next week. Let me repeat that, episode 100. It's been a phenomenal journey. Thank you so much, everyone, for your support along the way. And I couldn't think of a better guest for this than my boss, Yamini, right? And Waymo is among the handful of startups that's really succeeded in the enterprise space. We sell to some of the largest banks and insurers in the world. And this really was an enterprise masterclass, right? I mean, spoke about various aspects of setting up sales, customer success, product, and so on and so forth, in order to be able to sell to the enterprise. So really looking forward to that. And then Ram and Smita are fantastic entrepreneurs. They've run Rangde for almost about 14 years now. And again, it's a good episode to have a perspective on what social entrepreneurship in India is like. They're doing some fantastic work with solving credit access for micro entrepreneurs and so on in very distant parts of our country. Again, and their service and product has become supremely important post pandemic as well. So yeah, a couple of really good episodes coming up, and thank you again, everyone, for your support.
Well, I mean, look at us just 1 year back on a scooty ride, we were talking about starting a podcast for focusing on the Indian startup ecosystem, and now here we are talking about 100th episode. So a lot of things to reflect back on. And of course, all of these things wouldn't have been possible without our listeners. So thanks a lot to you folks for pushing us, for inspiring us, and for sharing your feedback with us. So yeah, it has been an incredible journey. Thanks a lot, Roshan, for taking us through the news from the week. Folks, do let us know how we did and what are you excited for and what would you like to see in our next 100 episodes of the Startup Operator podcast. We're there on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is Operator Startup, and the LinkedIn handle is the Startup Operator. Do let us know your thoughts and views. And yeah, hope you stay safe, get vaccinated, and take care.
Bye, folks. Take care.